Disney's Cruella, a novelization. Chapter 14. Barking echoed through the ballroom of the Baroness's mansion. Screams bounced off the walls and pierced the air. But Estella barely heard it. Her head and heart were fogged with grief as she stood, the realization of her mum's death pressing upon her. As Estella tried to steady her racing heart, the sounds of the room returned. She looked around. The place was pandemonium. Nothing elegant remained of the affair. In the chaos, women's hair had come down, men's suit jackets had been ripped, shreds of black and white littered the floor. Suddenly, Estella felt someone's hand on her arm. She turned, ready to defend herself, but relaxed when she realized it was just Jasper. With a nod of his head, he gestured for her to follow. The Baroness was no longer paying attention and didn't notice when Estella ran. Following close behind Jasper, Estella caught sight of Buddy up ahead. In his mouth he still clutched the necklace. Estella cheered him on silently as he got closer and closer to the door, but coming up from behind were the 3 Dalmatians. Their snarling and snapping became more furious as they got closer to their prey. Estella held back a scream as the second of the 3 dogs launched onto Buddy. The small dog vanished under the black and white fur. Estella heard a yip, and then Buddy reappeared. Still had the necklace, but only for a moment. The big dog reached out and snapped at Buddy, catching the necklace in its mouth. Startled, the Dalmatian swallowed it. Estella's eyes widened. Jasper and Horace were never going to believe her. To have gone through all that, only to lose the necklace to a Dalmatian's stomach. It wasn't fair. Pushed out the front door by the wave of people trying to escape the rat-infested ball, the 3 friends found themselves looking out at a sea of stalled cars. Drivers were shouting insults at one another as they tried, unsuccessfully, to maneuver away from the mansion. Partygoers popped their heads out the windows, hurling their own insults into the mix. Scanning the packed driveway, Estella spotted their getaway van. She groaned. It was being towed away.
"Well, here's hoping we've got a plan C,"
Horace said. Estella sighed. How had everything gone so terribly wrong? She had planned for every scenario. She had her I's and crossed her T's, and still they were stuck. She shook her head. No, she wasn't failing just because their van got towed. As Horace and Jasper mumbled to each other, Estella slipped down the drive and toward a row of cars whose engines weren't running. Front and center was the Baroness's tan and gold DeVille. Perfect. Estella opened its door and slid into the front seat. Making sure no one was watching, she leaned down and quickly pulled the wiring free. In a few swift and practiced moves, she heard the engine roar to life. Smiling, she put it into drive and revved the engine. People dodged out of the way as she sped past, coming to a screeching halt in front of Jasper and Horace. "Get in!" she yelled. They didn't hesitate. Jasper flung himself in the front seat as Horace and the 2 dogs clambered into the back. Then, with a screech of tires and a spray of gravel, Estella peeled out down the driveway. Estella didn't take her foot off the pedal until the Manor was a speck in her rearview mirror, and the lights of London flashed in front of her. Wrenching the wheel to the right, she took a hairpin turn at an alarmingly fast rate. Beside her, Jasper grabbed onto the back of his seat, trying to steady himself.
"I didn't know you knew how to drive," he said.
"I don't," Estella answered. Her eyes were full of fury, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. She knew she probably looked like a madwoman, but she didn't care. Taking another turn, she vaguely heard Horace and the dogs grunting as they were thrown from one side of the vehicle to the other.
"Estella?"
Horace said, nervously from the back seat. She ignored him.
"Stella?"
Jasper tried again.
"Are you all right?"
She still did not answer. Instead, she pushed the pedal down harder, accelerating to an even more dangerous speed, narrowly missing a pedestrian crossing the street. Yanked the wheel again. Tires screeched, and she heard the sound of burning rubber.
"Stop the car!"
Jasper's words startled Estella. As she slammed down on the brakes, the car skidded to a stop. Gasping for breath, Estella fumbled her way out of the car. She felt like the world was closing in on her. She wiped angrily at her eyes as tears fell, unstoppable, down her cheeks. Behind her, she heard Jasper and Horace get out of the car, but she didn't turn around. She stared up at the sky, the stars hidden from view by the London smog. Suddenly, her shoulders sank and she let out a shaky sob. "The Baroness killed my mother," she said. Saying the words out loud gave them weight and made her feel still sicker.
"What are you talking about?"
Jasper asked, confused. "The whistle," Estella said, earning her blank stares from the boys. "She called the dogs on her. It wasn't me. I'd always thought if I had just stayed in the car, everything would have been different. If I had been different. But she killed her, like she was nothing."
"Gripes,"
Jasper finally said, finding no other words. But he didn't need to. Something had shifted in Estella. In saying what had happened out loud, she had taken some of the power and given it back to herself. Her gaze focused, her shoulders straightened. Then, with a nod, she spun on her heel and got back into the driver's seat. "Let's go," she said to the boys. Having suffered through the last drive, Jasper and Horace exchanged nervous glances. Then they got in, making sure to buckle their seatbelts this time. Before they were even clicked, Estella floored the gas pedal and the car shot off down the dark street.
"What are you going to do?"
Jasper said when he finally got his breath back and peeled himself away from the seat he had been thrown against. Estella turned. A cold, wicked smile spread over her face. As they went under a streetlight, her white hair flashed brightly, while her black hair stayed in the shadows. The effect was eerie. "She took everything from me, and made me believe I deserved it," Estella said. "And now, my turn."
"What are you talking about?"
Jasper asked. "Revenge," Estella answered simply. Jasper didn't approve.
"You know what they say," he said. "If you're out for revenge, you best dig 2 graves."
Wrenching the wheel, Estella steered the car around a curve. "I thought it was revenge is a dish best served cold."
"I think that's pork pies,"
Horace said from the back seat. Estella glanced at him in the rearview mirror. He was sitting between the 2 dogs, looking happy as can be. "What?" she said. He was so odd sometimes.
"Pork pies is a dish best served cold, is the saying," he clarified.
"Point is," Estella said, her tone sharp. It surprised Jasper and Horace, especially Horace. He was always saying random things, and usually Estella didn't care. She had been trying to keep her cool, but enough was enough. She needed focus. She needed Jasper and Horace to focus. "Point is," she said again, "the Baroness destroyed my life, so I'm going to return the favor." Careening by an oncoming car, she laughed darkly. Yes, she was going to return the favor, in spades. The Baroness was going down, and Estella would watch the whole way.